Here's a video response for Mr. Scientist Sam, who apparently and unsurprisingly made a video response in regards to my combinatorial inflation video. Enjoy.
Ice, do you care to source your calculations, because I don't see how you came to this number? If we take the assumption that there is only one correct sequence of amino acids for any given protein, there is a search space of 20 to the 150 sequences, which is far higher than the number you gave. I assumed that you were going to engage in statistical masturbation in this video, but I didn't realize that you were so stupid that you can't even do that properly.
Actually, Sam, you need to pay attention more to the math you used there. But just to clarify, nowhere in the video did I even talk about how many possible ways are there for amino acids to randomly arrange in a given protein, which is what he thinks I did in the original video. The problem with his argument is that he confused combinatorial calculation with probability. His 20 to the power of 150 calculation is actually nothing more but a combinatorial calculation of all possible different ways the amino acids can be arranged in a 150 residue peptide chain. The 10 to the power of 77 calculation of a given protein with only 150 amino acids in length based on Douglas X is actually a probability calculation of finding a functional protein sequence with a specific effect. In this case, there is by average one correct functional sequence out of 10 to the power of 77 incorrect sequences that are non-functional in a protein of only 150 amino acids in length. By contrast, Sam assumed that I was talking about only one correct sequence while the rest were wrong. This is incorrect, as nowhere in the video did I even apply that. Contrary to Sam's assumption, there are actually many different amino acid substitutions that are functional in a protein space that is only 150 amino acids in length. Because of so many different amino acid substitutions, this increases the probability of hitting a functional protein. Although there are 20 to the power of 150 different ways to rearrange the amino acids, the presence of so many different arrangements that are functional decreases that 20 to the power of 150 number significantly, making it more likely to hit a functional protein. However, since the total number of all amino acid substitutions that are non-functional are so abundant in the protein space, this makes the total number of functional protein sequences still exceedingly rare. In other words, the total number of incorrect sequences overwhelms the correct ones, which is how the 10 to the power 77 probability came to be as calculated by geneticist Douglas X.
Well, I don't really know where ICE is getting off saying that there's a fierce argument between proponents of legitimate science, that is, proponents of evolution, and the intelligent design movement, because the intelligent design movement is pretty much universally shunned from the literature because they can't produce a good experiment.
You know, what's interesting about these intelligent design critics like Scientist Sam that argue against the theory of intelligent design about how 1. It fails to establish a good experiment, 2. It lacks a mechanism, and 3. It's untestable, is of how so much irony there is. To clarify, intelligent design by definition involves an intelligent agent. As well, as we all know and agree, life is composed of so many different types of molecules and other microscopic things like proteins, enzymes, cells, and so on, but more importantly, DNA as well as RNA. Now, when it comes to the question of the origin of life, some ID critics in support of evolution or abiogenesis would often tend to rely on the scientific literature and use it as an argument against intelligent design. For example, the famous Urey-Miller experiment, which is considered by some to explain how amino acids originated in the first place in the primordial soup. More significantly, the RNA world. ID critics like Sam propose that intelligent design demonstrates no testable mechanism that it can explain how life came to be, or whether DNA or RNA could by any small chance be intelligently designed. Yet, there are experiments where intelligent design is mimicked. For example, there are RNAs that have been created by intelligent agents in lab coats, where they very intentionally manipulated the conditions in their favor necessary for their existence. For instance, the creation of a self-replicating RNA molecule that was done only under intelligent intervention, as opposed to the conditions of nature. Or the creation of a protein by putting them in the controlled necessary conditions while intelligently blocking other variables that while allowing only the favorable ingredients. The mechanisms of ID is intelligent intervention, such as artificial selection, in vitro methods, predetermined conditions, and so on. As for those that argue that evolution and abiogenesis are distinct because evolution only tends to explain the origin of species, actually they are not. For abiogenesis, there must be proteins, amino acids, and other necessary biological components in order to create life. Yet, all of these necessary biological parts need to evolve in the first place in order to explain the origin and make it fit with standard evolutionary theory. So by definition, abiogenesis is indeed compatible with evolution since it requires the evolution of proteins and all other biological components necessary for life to exist.
This is why I don't think you're qualified to be addressing papers, ICE. There's a reason why they sampled the protein search space the way that they did. They wanted to address a combinatorial problem regarding proteins that are 80 amino acids long. Frameshift mutations and introduction of stop codons would have expanded that scope because they wouldn't have been fully sampling that specific search space. But even more than that, you can see in the figure right in front of your fucking face that there's a his tag. That's a protein tag so they can purify for a given target protein or proteins. You know what would have interfered with that? The introduction of a frameshift mutation or a stop codon, so they couldn't have actually done the protein tagging properly. This is intro biology. I learned this in intro biology lab, and I'm not even a goddamn wet lab person. I'm a computational scientist. God damn it.
First off, Sam, I did not directly criticize Sostak's paper. What I did criticize is how Litho Deadman attempted to debunk the combinatorial inflation problem by referring to the paper. What Litho Deadman failed to address is that he did not explain to his audience that those 4 ATP binding proteins originated under in vitro methodology as well as the utilization of mutagens. Of course, the method Sostak used is appropriate, but appropriate only for in vitro purposes. Yes, I did criticize Litho Deadman for the paper he cited, but for a valid reason, for the simple fact that their mutagenic and in vitro methodology do not comply with that of those proteins generated in nature. Unlike in vitro, where researchers deliberately manipulate the conditions under intelligent interventions to produce a specific effect or result. As I have described in this video I posted, the 1 times 10 to the power 11 probability of finding a functional ATP binding protein only remains true only in vitro experiments. When put into practice in the real world, it becomes a whole different ballgame, possibly even more unlikely than creating a functional protein in the lab. Litho Deadman, however, attempted to use Sostak's paper 2001 as the universal rule against the combinatorial inflation problem, which the paper relied under unrealistic conditions. Conditions that don't even exist in nature, or at least the conditions in which is presumed where life originated.
Nope, as I've so amply demonstrated, their goal was to randomly sample the sequence space of 80 amino acid long proteins. They did that. You don't understand the experiment. So here's a tip, ICE. Don't try to argue against experiments you don't understand.
I don't see how this is relevant to the point I made, but okay.
This isn't in the scope of the discussion of what Shostak and Keefe were getting at. They were trying to sample the search space. They weren't looking for actual functional implications. Why are you bringing this in? It's completely orthogonal to what we're talking about.
Sam, I don't understand why you're treating me as if I were criticizing Sostak. I wasn't. I was specifically criticizing Litho Deadman. Nothing less, nothing more. End of story. So just please quit grasping at straws and distorting my points.
Why is this surprising? The proteins didn't evolve in such a way that they were constrained by the cellular environment of the organism in order to ensure proper function. In fact, the authors themselves state in the introduction, one possibility is that natural selection may have biased the set of proteins found in nature to favor only those structures that are well suited to the cellular environment. This would suggest that the proteins with non-cellular origins might have structures or functions that are incompatible with normal cellular biology, which of course would significantly limit their use in synthetic biology.